Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Surprise, surprise, Netflix just threw their hat into the ring. That is right. Netflix is trying to buy the Warner Brothers studio, everything DC. I know there's a ton of questions about what this would mean for James Gunn, all the DCU projects that he's working on right now, the new movies, the new TV shows. Literally just a couple days ago, Ted Sarandos, one of the co-heads of Netflix, said that they had absolutely no interest, which should let you know that everybody in corporate America lies about everything through their teeth. They definitely want themselves a piece of Warner Brothers, DC, all the other pieces of their assets, because it's the entire studio. So I will explain what's going on and what it means and what it does not mean, because I know a lot of truthers came out of the woodwork the last couple of years saying that they want Netflix to buy DC so that they'll do the Snyderverse and bring Zack Snyder back to do more of his Justice League movies with Henry Cavill, Superman, Ben Affleck, Batman, all those characters. There's no surprise this stuff this seismic drives people crazy on the internet, but thankfully some of the people that are actually involved in what's going on have talked about it. Because James Gunn has already talked a little bit about what's going on in the background, some of the other high-level people that are associated with this, like David Zaslav, have talked a little bit about it, because it's a bit of a bidding war situation with pretty much every major entity, every major studio in Hollywood wanting themselves some Warner Brothers, which does naturally include all of DC and everything else. Like, it's the entire studio, like I said. So we will break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. It is just the beginning. It's going to be like this with different people trying to grab a piece of Warner Brothers for the next couple of years. Like, it's going to take a long time for the dust to settle on this. So we will see what kind of Thunderdome situation we have and who winds up winning. Side note too, I'll probably wait till after Disney does make a formal buyout offer for Warner Brothers and DC before I do a bigger video about why doesn't Disney buy Warner Brothers. There have been a couple questions about that, like why don't they actually buy the company? There are a couple legal reasons why they don't want to do that right now. This weekend, the real elephant in the room is Netflix. So what just happened? WTF? A couple of weeks ago, David Zaslav officially made it known that the entire Warner Brothers studio company, which owns DC, ton of other smaller studios and brands, was up for sale to the highest bidder. At the time Paramount was the first to make offers, Warner Brothers has since rejected their first 3 offers over the course of those last couple of weeks. Separately, Bloomberg also confirmed that David Ellison, who runs Skydance, they're the real money people here who bought Paramount and are competing with Netflix to buy Warner Brothers now. They confirmed David Ellison wanted to keep Warner Brothers assets intact when they bought them out, meaning he specifically wanted to keep DC, HBO, the leadership at those companies intact. Confirming my suspicion that he wanted to keep James Gunn and Peter Safran running DC, doing their thing.
Things that, I plan on doing with them, that some of which will happen, some of which will not. But also everything's always a work in progress.
What it seems like is happening with Netflix is a similar situation to Paramount with a couple exceptions. Like, it's not the exact same as the Paramount deal they're trying to go for. So Netflix would want to get rid of David Zaslav, like most people that are buying Warner Brothers want to get rid of David Zaslav because he's getting paid so much money. What would wind up changing significantly at Netflix, though, would be James Gunn would start releasing his DC TV shows and movies to Netflix instead of HBO Max. Netflix would probably shut down HBO Max and just put all their stuff on the Netflix streaming service. And because Netflix seems like they absolutely despise having to put their movies in theaters, at best, you'd see a Netflix version of a Justice League movie that James Gunn makes in like 3 to 4 years, release in theaters for like a single week, then hit Netflix immediately instead of a regular theatrical release for like a couple months. Netflix has made a couple exceptions to this rule. Like, really good example recently for like a big cultural moment is K-pop Demon Hunters. They let that into theaters briefly, like a couple theaters for a little while, and they're supposed to be letting the final Stranger Things Season 5 episode play in theaters for a little while as well. But remember, those are meant to be extreme exceptions. Rewind a couple years ago, if you remember the Arrowverse TV shows when they started releasing them on Netflix each year, CW signed a deal with them for hundreds of millions of dollars to syndicate their DC TV shows, the Arrowverse shows, on Netflix internationally for a good long while. Just imagine that for James Gunn's new DCU TV shows and movies, but all the time, every year, and maybe only getting a limited release on the HBO linear channels. Some people wanting to buy Warner Brothers here, like some of the companies, want the linear TV channels that they own right now. Some people like Netflix, though, do not. Netflix has no interest in owning old school linear TV channels. This is why just a little while ago, when David Zaslav announced that they were going to be selling the company to the highest bidder, he said that they were going to be separating parts of their business from the streaming side of Warner Brothers. The deal will be done in 2026. So like all the linear TV channels, the old school cable channels will be separate part of the company from the streaming part of the business. All to clear the runway for companies like Netflix who don't want the linear TV channels.
Two, I think, the Flash of Two Worlds, the kind of spin on that we did with Patty Spivot at the front.
I fully expect this Thunderdome battle of companies trying to get them to last at least all of next year. So by the end of 2026, you'll probably hear Paramount or Netflix or Apple or some other company has won and bought them out. If you remember when Disney bought Fox a couple years ago, it actually took them a couple years to complete that deal. They started a couple years before Avengers Infinity War. The deal didn't actually finish going through, like they didn't officially own the company. The ink wasn't dry till right after Avengers Endgame came out in theaters. This is why when they announced that they were buying Fox, Kevin Feige couldn't just turn around and immediately start making new X-Men movies in 2018, 2019. Like he had to wait years for that to actually happen. It will wind up being a similar situation for whoever buys Warner Brothers. They announce that they're buying them, and then it would take a couple years for the ink to dry, meaning that during that time, that couple year stretch, James Gunn would still be making all the DC movies and DC TV shows that he's in the middle of working on right now that he wants to make. So for at least the next year or two, regardless of what happens with Warner Brothers, the parent company, none of the DC movies or TV shows that James Gunn wants to make will stop. What he might do, though, is change his mind about a movie or TV show that's in development and decide not to make it, but nobody like David Zaslav or somebody else is going to tell him that he's not allowed to make something that he doesn't want to make or that he wants to make. Nobody's going to walk onto the lot while he's shooting Man of Tomorrow next year, like the next Superman movie, and tell him to stop rolling cameras. Like he'll just continue making all those movies. Where things start to change for the upcoming DC movies and TV shows would be after the ink is dry and the deal to buy the whole Warner Brothers company is fully complete. Because this video is mostly about Netflix, though, they want slightly different things that Paramount wants. What you'd see is slightly less theatrical movies and lower budget movies and TV shows in general, because Netflix isn't going to be licensing any of the DC movies or TV shows to other streaming services. There are no extra revenue streams that they have available to them like a traditional studio would, earning their money back on a theatrical release. As of me posting this video, the streaming wars are long over. There are winners, there are losers, but the days of unlimited budgets for streaming movies and TV shows is over. So again, another perfect example of this phenomenon is the Arrowverse. It's a great example of what it would look like in practice for the DCU on Netflix. Just imagine a James Gunn-style Arrowverse with fewer episodes per season and fewer shows in general and slightly higher special effects budgets. James Gunn said a couple years ago, before there was any talk of any kind of buyout, that his plan for DC was to eventually get to the point where they could release 2 live-action movies per year, 1 animated movie. If Netflix is successful in buying them, imagine that number just getting a little bit smaller, like 1 movie per year, but on Netflix, smaller budgets, 1 animated series per year, 1 live-action series per year. You get the idea. So at Netflix, yes, technically James Gunn's plan for how the DCU would unfold would have to change a little bit because there would be fewer opportunities for him to do stories that he's thinking about doing right now. But he would still be able to tell the story that he's trying to tell. It would just happen to happen in different types of movies and TV shows. For example, a show like Peacemaker probably would not get made. Netflix would just want to do the bigger fare like Lanterns, Green Lantern TV show, and like a Batman universe TV show like Penguin, another villain-based TV show. They love stuff like that. And you have to remember that Netflix only really cares about bringing in brand new subscribers, so they'd be doing shows, DC shows, for whichever characters they think would bring in the most new subscriber signups. Sometimes that leads to really weird decisions that you normally wouldn't pick if you asked which DC shows they should be making. Here's where we actually get to the last couple of years. If you remember, a while ago, there was a large group of people online who believed that Netflix was going to buy DC specifically so that they could continue the Snyderverse and do his Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 and so on with Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck. You get the idea. There were people that legit believed that Netflix wanted to buy the Snyderverse portion, not even entirety of DC. They just wanted to buy the Snyderverse part of DC. That was a completely different thing, not connected to any of the buyout talks that started a couple weeks ago. Remember, all the people that are trying to buy Warner Brothers in DC right now have to buy the entire Warner Brothers company, not just one small part of DC. Mostly though, right now, it just seems like Zack Snyder is contented in doing stuff in his own sandbox, his own IP that he's developing himself, not playing in other people's sandboxes. But that's like a never say never situation. He didn't say he would never come back and do more DC, like he's always down to do more DC stuff. Previously, I suggested that the Absolute Universe as an Elseworlds animated movie would actually be a good place for him to come back. But if you're still kind of confused about what this all means for James Gunn and the DCU movies, TV shows that are happening right now, for the next 3 to 4 years or so, they're all totally safe, regardless of who winds up buying them. But a lot of what happens with the DC movies after that 3 to 4 year period, though, just depends on how the upcoming movies perform. So James Gunn himself already said that he had to make changes to his original DC Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters plan. All those movies and shows that he announced a long time ago because the development for some of them stalled, others that he wasn't very confident enough and didn't want to continue with. This will continue. Don't be surprised if the movies you've heard James Gunn has announced right now change again in the next 2 years. A lot of the future of David Cornswell's Superman, for example, will depend on how the Man of Tomorrow movie does and whether or not he completes his 4-movie Superman arc for David Cornswell. James Gunn previously said that he has a 4-movie Superman arc idea.
But it's been a hell of a ride. See you for the next one.
What this really means in practice, though, is that David Cornswell will still be the Superman of the DCU in like 3-4+ years, but James Gunn isn't going to force a 3rd Superman solo movie out if Man of Tomorrow doesn't do well enough. He would just put Superman in some other big team-up movie after that. And yes, there will eventually be a new Justice League forming. We have the Justice Gang right now, but James Gunn said that they aren't even close to forming the actual Justice League yet. Personally, I don't think we'll see them officially on screen together with the new roster for at least a couple years until after Batman Brave and the Bold, assuming that plans for that continue. Always shifting, things are in the future. I am sure there are going to be a billion more questions about this, so I'll continue to do videos as it develops and we learn about more companies throwing their hats in the ring. But there's a ton of other big stuff coming up, like we're going to get a Lanterns trailer sometime soon, maybe before the end of the year, Avengers Doomsday trailer, Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer, whatever they wind up releasing, of course I will do videos for it. Everybody click here for that talk that I did with James Gunn just a couple days ago, and click here for my other Paramount James Gunn video about their buyout. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.